eyes focused on the prize. Let's tell a true story. A story about fixing your eye optimistically and relentlessly looking ahead toward the prize, whatever the obstacle. It's dark. Always dark. You can't see anything. No colors, no shapes, nothing. Life is less than black and white. You are blind. A young woman's voice. Relax. You're falling asleep. You cannot pierce the cloud, but her voice is soothing. So young. You're here for an experimental surgery, aren't you? Can't remember. You only pray she knows what she's doing. When a young scientist discovered a technique in 1986, she immediately knew it was revolutionary and so filed a medical patent. It happened one rainy, cold, lonely night. She was in the lab, working until 2 a.m., as usual, the only female in the department. When she discovered the technique after describing her accomplishment to the director, he replied that it was impossible. You didn't do that. That wouldn't be the first dismissal. She received anger from certain colleagues too. How did a little woman have this scientific breakthrough? The director wouldn't look her in the eyes. Beginnings. The main character of this story had an early interest in medicine since a child. She was a self-professed nerd, actually. Little did she know, decades later, she would be on the brink of revolutionizing the face of eye surgery, and that the whole medical system would push her resolve to its limit, the whole way there. She arrived in the world in 1942, born to a family in Harlem. They never thought of themselves as poor. Instead, her family, her mother and father, instilled their children with a sense that they could achieve anything. Along with this, the girl had a natural strong work ethic and a shining optimism that would propel her throughout her career. Her father immigrated to the USA from Trinidad, West Indies, while her mother came from the south of the island. Both had very high expectations. They wanted 100% and only A's. The young woman therefore believed she had to be the best, that she would only get there by hard work. In high school, she became a National Science Foundation school scholar. She was featured front page by newspapers for doing scientific research, not exactly for reasons you might think. This was the peak of the civil rights era. The newspaper articles featured her for being a black woman doing research with a white male colleague. The notion that a black child in Harlem could be doing scientific research was newsworthy. She progressed on, being awarded a scholarship to Hunter College in 1960, where she wanted to study chemistry. Believers in work ethic and self-pride, her family decided she did not need the scholarship. Her father, in particular, was resolved that no daughter of his would be given charity, which was how he perceived scholarships. Instead, he would pay for the books and tuition and trusted her to get in via her brains and work ethic. To him, she could gain entry purely based on her test scores and academic merit, which was the prerequisite to getting in. The woman set her mind to it. All of this instilled in her mind from a young age the sense that she was not poor, nor disadvantaged, but that she had everything she required to reach her goals. In her own words, quote, "I recall the look of surprise when I met with the committee and advised them that I did not need the money. In today's society, there are those who would argue I should have accepted it and spent it on luxury items, but my family had a simplistic, easy notion that if your clothes were clean and honestly obtained, that you were okay. So, from my perspective, I was rich, not poor. I carried this drive and motivation throughout my career." Taking no shortcuts. During her chemistry studies, she came across an ophthalmologist who inspired her to enter the same profession, a female professor by the name of Louis A. Young. Seeing how dedicated, brilliant, and people-oriented the professor was, the young woman decided that it was a noble path for herself too. So, it was a surprise when she found herself the only African-American ophthalmology resident when she began training at New York University. Yet, she didn't care. She knew her exceptional grades and credentials were responsible for getting her a coveted spot at a very competitive residency. As the eternal optimist, she was just excited and joyous to be able to progress along her path towards her dream. One day, she would be a prestigious ophthalmologist. Being a part of an honored program was just the first step. The daily experience of training required that optimism. She became accustomed to being the only woman and the only person of color in rooms. However, she refused to let that instill an inferiority complex. Instead, she made it the reverse, determining to become the best of the best. Besides, the pressure of residency had a way of dissolving all ethnic and cultural divides. As far as her student peers were concerned, they were all part of one team. Her path became slippery when it came time to finding funding to do research in order to further her career. Faced with discrimination, she received no grants. However, as her father had taught her, she knew she had the wits and creativity to outmaneuver systematic racism she encountered. Not spending her time and energy being complacent, she took what she referred to as the high road and got to work. For the young woman, these obstacles were occurring early in her career. Chances were they would continue, perhaps even intensify later on. Developing the fortitude, strategy, and excellence to deal with them every step along the way would only build on itself. An unshakable sense of destiny. Due to her family, the young woman was a firm believer that labels could be used to shame or to motivate you. It all depended on what label you accepted and applied to yourself. Even though your position might employ a negative label against you strategically, you did not have to adopt it. For example, if you apply the label poor to yourself, then you might continue on in life to believe you could not be a winner financially and in other ways. However, if you apply the label of winner to yourself, then the expectation would be completely reversed. She also saw all of the subtle discriminations she faced as something systematic within the organization, rather than personal. This helped her to focus on outmaneuvering those structures, knowing that they were based on false preconceptions of what women and/or African Americans were intellectually capable of. Always, she retained the firm optimism and belief that there was a way to reach her objectives, even in that environment. The young scientist decided that, ultimately, the high road approach would lead to justice and triumph. When her grant applications were rejected, she relied on her research skills to locate scientists who might be more aligned with her specific passions and vision for what was possible within her field. Chances were that such passions could bridge any cultural and ethnic gaps. She was determined to do laser research. However, her grants kept being rejected in the US. So she went into campaign mode, researching the best laser research labs across the world, expanding her scope of investigation. The young woman contacted each director and bugged them until they gave over and allowed her access into their laboratories. Her approach was methodical. She would find the principal investigator and give them an outline on how she would spend her time using the laboratory, showing them her clear reasoning, understanding, and vision. Rather than focusing on the injustice of it all, she considered what the problem might be behind the discrimination. Perhaps they had low expectations of her qualifications. Another person in her situation might have reached this position via scholarship. She would convince them of the idea and simultaneously show them her personality and character in person. She wasted no time making complaints to boards or trying to capture the press's attention for unfair discriminatory practices. Instead, she spent her time enjoying herself, thinking, designing, and dancing. Over time, she geared up her mission to secure a laboratory. Here's what she would do. Quote, "First, I presented a hypothesis and organized experimental plan, and I was willing to argue my case and debate the pros and cons. But I think I really succeeded because of a shared zeal to discover and invent, be part of something new and adventurous, and shared adrenaline for chasing the high of that climatic eureka moment of discovery. She viewed herself as an explorer, like Columbus, sailing across the Atlantic, and eventually she was able to find and secure 3 friendly laboratories to work in. The first was the Loughborough Institute of Technology in England, second was the Berlin Laser Medical Institute, and the third was the Rothschild Eye Institute in Paris. Just doing your thing. The young woman's name is Patricia Bath. Patricia Bath was the first African American to receive a medical patent. Although many articles and historians have referred to her with this moniker, she likes to think of herself simply as the first person to develop and demonstrate the laser phaco technology. Laser phaco is a form of laser cataract surgery. Indeed, Patricia's version of the surgery was the first truly laser-treated cataract surgery. Before this, YAG laser capsulotomy only used lasers after the cataract was already removed, rather than for the actual cataract surgery. The human eye contains millions of cells working together to give the gift of sight. As we age, eyes can cloud, causing what we call a cataract. That makes it hard to see. Laser surgery cures what will essentially lead to blindness. Her form of utilizing laser technology triggered the beginning of the laser cataract surgery era. Before this, surgery was completed via ultrasound phaco, and since her innovations, laser cataract surgery has continued to advance with new and improved technology and equipment that reduce time required. Patricia was a pioneer. She demonstrates the forward-thinking mind of a bold person. Her unjust trials only made her more tenacious and extreme in aspiration. Just have a look at her trajectory. After graduating Hunter College in 1964 in chemistry, she then graduated at Howard University College of Medicine. 5 years later, she became the first African American to have a residency in ophthalmology at New York University. And in 1975, first woman ophthalmologist in the Department of Ophthalmology at UCLA's Jules Stein Institute. As a medical student, she was still involved in the civil rights movement. Witnessing the healthcare disparities amongst different racial groups, she became determined to make a difference from the inside for her community in Harlem. She served people in Compton and Watts, in addition to her practice in UCLA, to give back to poorer communities. For the next 5 years, she founded and co-founded Institutes for the Prevention of Blindness, a training program at UCLA, and became the chair of an ophthalmology residency program at King Drew UCLA, making her the first woman ophthalmology chair in US history. She was the first in many things. Inventing laser phaco was only one of many. 2009, President Barack Obama appointed her to his chair for digital accessibility for the blind for her work with them over her career. Quote, "Shake off the haters. You know, hateration. Segregation, racism, that's the noise. And you have to ignore that. Keep your eyes focused on the prize." She shows there is a difference between saying we want something and being willing to do anything to get it. Her bold story demonstrates the power of intense belief and optimism when hand in hand with work ethic and lateral thinking. Anyway, that's Patricia's story. I wonder what will be yours. Demonstrates the power of intense belief and optimism when hand in hand with work ethic and lateral thinking. Anyway, that's Patricia's story. I wonder what will be yours.